Welcome to Medicine. Today we are talking with Caleb Sutton. We've worked together for a long time and he serves as the VP of Business Operations at our company. He has done a lot of things over the years and worked with many of our teams. One of the biggest things we wanted to talk about today is all of his work around coaching and the culture that he's developed within Integritas. We have a unique culture here. We have a lot of fun. And we have values that we hold very dearly. And that has come through a lot of coaching, though. Caleb has this vision for where we need to go, the things we need to do, and it's brought out through that coaching. When you first started, we didn't have any coaching. We were a very small company. And you brought in coaching, and now we're doing coaching all the time. And it's really been transformative. What did that look like coming into a company with no coaching? And then why did you get that started? And how did that roll at the beginning?
It's so interesting to think back. We've been in business for 12 years. I've been here for 10. And when I joined Integritas, I don't know that I knew that coaching was even a thing.
Yeah.
In the professional context. So was not aware that this was an actual thing that was beneficial, that needed to happen, and was really important for an organization, for the health of the organization and the success of an organization.
Right.
Our company bears the personality of our CEO. So when I joined the company 10 years ago, there was already, just because of his personality, a culture of feedback. Mm-hmm. And so Dr. Doolittle was very big on giving feedback when he saw something that needed to be improved and changed. So we had a culture of feedback, but we didn't have a formal system in place for delivering that feedback, for helping people to grow personally and professionally.
Right.
Years in, through working with my current coach, Laura Shantz, from Laura Shantz Consulting Associates, she introduced this concept of a formal coaching system and process.
So formal coaching, so previously, how would the feedback look if it was not formal coaching?
And that's a great distinction. So you have ongoing coaching, and that takes place every day, all day. So as you encounter someone, as you come across something that you like, that you see, you give that positive affirmation and that feedback right away. You don't wait. And the same is true if you see something that you know needs to improve or change, you speak up right away. So there's that kind of coaching, but then there's the formal, hey, let's set some time aside, let's sit down one-on-one, and let's focus on your personal and professional growth and development. So it's not about the operations of the company, of the operations of the job. It's about that individual, and it's set aside and scheduled and intentional.
That makes sense. Some companies do this, and it's like their yearly evaluation, and we have it set up monthly, which is really helpful to get that feedback early, and not a year later. Hey, 11 months ago there was this issue. You said personal, like we're probably very familiar within the company, professional development, helping people climb the ladder. What did personal growth and development look like in the context of coaching?
Well, you actually said two things that are really neat, and I'm going to ask or answer your question in a moment, but I want to speak to what you said before you asked the question. The annual evaluation. It blows my mind that this is still a normal practice in our country, in our society, and it's still a big thing. I've been reading recently about how do you interact in an annual evaluation, and to think that I'm going to meet with my supervisor once a year and go over my performance for a whole year and be graded on that.
Decisions about pay raises and promotions.
It's, hey, we're going to rate you based on your performance for the past year, and you did okay, and so you're going to get a 2% increase or whatever. That just is astounding to me. That's
terrible.
so normal, and it's terrible. It's
Yeah.
demotivating, it's demoralizing, and it's very ineffective if you want to create any kind of change. So I just wanted to comment on that, because it's such a big thing.
I talk about with my kids a lot how you only grow through pain or through feedback, and pain is feedback. And if you are not giving somebody feedback frequently, like you were saying, as soon as you see something that you like or don't like, you're like, hey, let's talk about this. If you don't give them any feedback and you wait for a year, they have no opportunity to improve.
All that lost opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, people are afraid of feedback. People, you said pain is feedback. Well, for a lot of people, feedback is pain.
Yeah, true.
And so I think that there's that mix as well where people will avoid it. They're not going to seek it. And so if you're also avoiding it as a leader, there's no opportunity for growth.
I think that we're getting a little off what my initial question, but that I want to dig into this a little bit more, because part of the culture that we talked about was that we do have people here that know you're coming in and getting coaching, you're getting feedback, and you have to have people that are wanting that and wanting to grow.
Yeah.
How do you build that into the whole hiring process? Is a whole nother conversation, but how do you build that in early, that this is a growth culture?
Yeah. So, that's a wonderful question. And I think back to the beginning days of our company, as I mentioned, 12 years in business. We're not a tiny company. We're also not a massive corporation. We have people on the team who have been with us for longer than I have. You and I have been here for a long time. And so we already had people on the team before we started really developing this concept of coaching. And so for those long timers here, we had to coach that up, and we've had to show people the benefit of feedback for themselves, for their team, for the company. So you have that. And if anybody is trying to implement coaching in an organization, a pre-existing organization, you're going to have to, all the change management stuff that you learned in school, to get people to recognize the benefit of coaching for themselves.
So you have to be initially willing as a leader to have crucial conversations. Yeah. You're going to have a lot of crucial conversations, and not being afraid to give feedback is the only way you're going to lead that change and make that cultural shift.
Yes.
You can't have conversations and be scared about what that looks like. And
oh man, and that's so hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this whole, you've read the books, you've gotten, you've been through a lot of training through John Maxwell's group
on coaching. And then I love Crucial Conversations book, and Art of Negotiating the Best Deal, and Never Split the Difference. There's a lot of books we read to try to get better at having those hard conversations.
And, there's so much out there. People love to talk about the generations. It's a very common thing we hear these days about the different generations and how we see the world and communicate and process. And somewhere, at some point down the line, people have lost this ability to have mature, important conversations around hard things. So I know we're meandering, but I love meandering.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. And I think for leaders, yes. So if you're implementing a one-on-one coaching program, formal program in your organization, and I don't know, it depends on where you are in the organization. If you're in HR, if you're a CEO or an executive in an organization, then you're more naturally going to be able to build something and put it out there. If you're not, then you need to talk to the people who are in those places of decision making and implementing something like this. But your first step will be to get your key players on board and select 2 or 3 great leaders in your organization and say, hey, let's talk about coaching.
Yeah.
It's a thing, and let me explain it to you. And because they're good leaders, they're going to jump on this. They're going to be excited. And then they can become the evangelists, the promoters to spread the good news of coaching in the organization and get buy-in from the rest of the leaders.
So you start off with that component and teaching them how to have crucial conversations, give good feedback, and then you implement, you mentioned the personal development.
Yeah.
So what is the personal development that's being gone over monthly?
We have a tagline or a motto in our company, a kind of an informal motto. It's all about relationships. And when a leader is developing a relationship with the person he or she leads, that relationship becomes the foundation for feedback to happen and coaching to happen.
Yeah.
If you have a relationship that's built on trust, then you can get to the hard things.
Yes. Yeah.
And so where does the personal play into all of this? When you have a good relationship with the people you lead, that means you know them not just as a worker, as a part of the machine, but as a human being.
Right.
And you know the names of their children, the name of their spouse, pets, their extended family, their story. You know all these things. And what I've discovered over time in one-on-one coaching, people have varying degrees of transparency and drama. Some people have very low transparency, and that's fine. You know, if they don't want to share and talk about what's happening in their heart,
Right.
that's fine. We don't have to go there, and I'm not going to pry, and we're not going to push. But some people want to go there, and they need to. And coaching is a great place for people to share some hard things. And as coaches, we of course need to make sure that we're very clear where the boundary lies between being a coach and a leader manager and being a therapist,
Right.
a counselor, a pastor, a psychiatrist. And so there is a boundary there that we don't cross, but we want people to become happier, healthier, more effective versions of themselves. And that extends beyond the walls of our corporate office, the hospitals where we work, into our personal lives, our families. So the personal is very important.
So what's that look like? What kind of coaching are you giving that grows somebody personally? Because we can give them books on like, you need to do this better to have better speaking skills at the company, or we need you to improve your efficiency in this, so this is how you'll grow professionally, so you're a better worker in the machine, the hive, the family, however, whichever model we're looking at. But what does it look like to coach your direct reports personally?
I think it comes down to caring. And when we show interest in the person, apart from what they do, and this is where, you know, you're getting away from, post World War II American industry management, or is all focused on the work.
Right.
And nothing about the human. It's so interesting. And then coming to today, here we are, 2025, a lot has happened since then. And we're all, many companies, many organizations, and I like to talk about organizations, nonprofits, hospitals, churches, small businesses, big businesses. We're learning that the human and human resources is so important. This is what it's all about. It's about people, no matter what business you're in. So when we engage and show interest in that human, and we show caring, that builds the trust that can then lead to growth.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I think you're asking me, what does personal coaching look like? So I know I didn't answer that perfectly. We are demonstrating caring for the individual, and that can lead to actual advice. But what I've learned, it's so fascinating. Every leader manager does this differently. Some people are naturally inclined to give advice, and others are more reluctant. And I think there's room for all of that. And it depends on the relationship and the personalities involved. But there are times where that moment, you may be the only person that that team member has in their life that can speak wisdom into the marriage crisis, the child rearing crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of those
The health
affect
crisis.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Like, it's hard to come to work and spend a lot of time and energy and 8 hours, 10 hours of your day and have a lot of things going on in your life and pretend those don't exist. And to have a manager that you can talk to and say, all right, I'm going through this. What does that look like right now? Just having someone to talk to is really helpful. And then I talk to some of my direct reports. Most of them are physicians, and a lot of the personal growth has been more around how they can be better versions of themselves, and it has like minimal impact on their ability to be a good ER physician or hospitalist. And it's more about they enjoy life more, they have better relationships outside of work, and growing them in that.
Yeah.
So that looks, in a formal setting, you're sitting down and doing that monthly. What have you seen? Have you seen big benefits in like short or long term that are like for you, like this is why you have to do coaching?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. If you have that traditional business upbringing, whether it's an MBA or just working in business or in healthcare, and you're very management focused and you haven't really been a lot of leadership focused, you may be looking at ROI. Okay, what does this mean for the bottom line of my organization? And I think there are benefits to your bottom line. We've seen, I believe, a tremendous employee retention, employee satisfaction, which leads to improved performance and teamwork. When people come to work and they feel like, I go to work at Integritas, whether it's at the Carbondale office or at the hospital where I work, and I enjoy going to work.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely look forward to it. And that's amazing. What that does for your communication that day, the work you do, the quality of the work, your interactions is phenomenal. And in the end, you're helping people.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important. I do think that... Oh, you were asking about the benefits. Sorry, I did.
Yeah.
The ROI. So there are all of those things. You're going to get those things. But I do think you have to keep a long-term perspective. And if you implement one-on-one coaching and you're 2 or 3 months in and you're saying, well, I don't see the benefits of this, be patient. I have seen that people normally grow very slowly over a long period of time. And so sometimes you'll get the big ahas, light bulbs, lightning bolt change, road to Damascus experiences. Sometimes, but not often. And usually what I've seen, it's been phenomenal to watch in our company in particular, bringing in young people with very little work experience, taking a chance on them and bringing them into the company, and then watching over the years them grow into a leadership role.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
It is.
Self-management and just the vast things that they've learned, systems and leadership, and it's phenomenal. So you'll see it. It'll just take time.
I think that's a good point, because just personally, I know I grow very slowly.
Yeah.
And sometimes have to be taught the lesson a few times before it really sinks in and I understand how to change this habit and get out of a rut. So those young leaders, or someone that's wanting to newly implement this process and get away from an annual review to more monthly feedback, where do they go for tools to develop this?
They can email me.
Yeah.
So we'll put the my email address and the notes for the podcast. I think that would be great. People can reach out to me directly. I can send templated agendas. So I was about FDR said a chicken in every pot. I think it was FDR, if I'm not misquoting. I say an agenda for every meeting. So if you're going to have a planned meeting, have an agenda, and I can provide a template to people who are interested. And when you see that agenda, it keeps you on track. It makes sure that you're covering all the important things you need to cover. So we start with a welfare check-in. This is the personal piece that you were
Right, the caring.
The caring. How are you? What's going on? And then you get into what's going well at work. What's a challenge? What can I help you with? Annual development plan. How are you growing? What goals are you setting? So in terms of resources, I can provide a templated agenda. We have what we call an annual development plan for goal setting. And those two tools together are basically the foundation for a formal coaching program.
Right. That makes sense. And it's really easy from that point to build that out for your teams. And a lot of times it's just having the conversation, like actually sitting down. I care about you.
Yeah.
I might not be very good at this, but like what's going well, what's not, how can we do better?
Yeah.
And if you're open with them saying, I kind of messed up in not communicating this to you effectively.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I messed up in not getting this done quickly. I've had people too over the years who are like, I felt like I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And so I didn't feel like doing very much because I didn't have a direction. So it was good to be like, hey, we're on the same page. Like I didn't give you much direction and didn't see you doing very much. And so like,
makes sense.
I need to give you some more clear directions. And that really helps. That's what I go back to when I think of crucial conversations is like, we imagine this could be a really hard conversation that's like, I'm about to fire you because you didn't do your job, and they're being really defensive. But when you're setting it up as like, hey, we're having our normal review.
Yeah.
We're going to sit down and talk through it, and I want you to get better. I want you to grow. Yeah. I care about you as a person. I care about your work here, and I want to know, like, what did you do well? This is exciting for all of us. And then you work together, and you keep growing and getting better, and it's just, that's a beautiful process.
It is wonderful, and that's where you want to end. And I think if you're looking at implementing a more formal process, start small.
Yeah.
Set like you said, just make it a check-in, and then start introducing some of these concepts. And I think actually, if you're implementing this from scratch, you want those first few sessions to be really low risk, low.
Right. Yes. Still with an agenda, though.
Still with maybe just a basic agenda.
Yeah.
In that, and then you're building that trust.
Yeah.
It can be intimidating if they come in and you're like, all right, here are the top 10 things you need to change or do differently.
Yes.
It's not a good thing.
One of the things that I've enjoyed too over the years was being able to have a softball agenda, like where you just have, let's go over your DISC profile or personality quiz, your strengths finder. Yeah. And you're like, where do you see your strengths and weaknesses? Do you agree with this? What things do you think you need to improve and why? And it just, you then collaborate. You're like, oh, here's mine. Here's my strengths. Here's my communication style.
Yeah.
And then you just have open communication about honest facts about how you work and where you're growing.
Those conversations always go so well.
Yeah.
And I think, mainly because people love to talk about themselves. And so I've never had, and I think it's a wonderful way to explore how you're going to work together.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think the DISC profile in particular, that's crucial to go over with your team members so that you can figure out, we might run into some issues here if we're not careful,
Right. Yeah.
if I'm not communicating the way that you need to be communicated with.
And going back to, you just have to have communication.
Yeah.
DISC is amazing. I love it. And it helps you communicate more effectively. Agendas help you communicate more effectively. But having that communication, it goes back to meet, sit down,
Yeah.
talk.
And I think the meet, sit down, and talk, one of the things that's so important for people to realize is you have to put it on the calendar.
Yes.
And if you don't, it won't happen. Because we can fool ourselves and think, oh, this is important, I'll do it. But we won't unless it's scheduled and you got that there.
Yeah.
And I talk to people too about, you have a remote worker, you have a PRN employee. Take the principle of one-on-one coaching and apply it to your specific situation.
Right.
Not any two organizations are the same. So maybe that's a Teams or a Zoom call. Maybe it's a quarterly meeting instead of a monthly meeting. But
right, especially if they are more part-time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, we talked a lot about how the coaching started, where we're at kind of now, how to develop your own and why you should. Anything else we didn't cover in the coaching realm that you'd really like to talk about?
I think one thing, thinking about, we work with hospitals. I mean,
Yeah.
that is what we do. And for a hospital, you're going to have leaders leading large teams.
Yeah.
And so when you do some simple math, you're going to think, how could I do an hour? Because I usually recommend an hour to 2 hours for a coaching session. And so you do some simple math, and it makes no sense, right? So I just want to say, let's remember the principle and take that to our organization and figure out what we could do that would be practical, that would make sense for people, but still that coaching is happening regularly.
Right. And it can be every other month.
Yeah.
It can be assigning some people.
Yes.
If you have a huge team, you're probably not managing them effectively.
And that's a hard thing to sell to somebody. And if you're not a decision maker in your organization and you can't take the org chart and just shuffle things around, that's hard, right? But I think you might need to have some hard conversations with the people who do make those decisions.
Yes.
Could you promote some nurses into team lead roles? Could you promote some people into those positions where they could provide coaching? I think there's a great opportunity there.
And that already goes back to you as a leader who are trying to implement need to talk with your leaders as well.
Yes.
And have that open communication and dialogue.
Yeah.
It's you implementing that at that level will then allow that to trickle down, and you want the whole organization to run smoothly. So
Yeah.
start at the top, make it happen,
Yes.
have good communication.
Yep. Laura Shantz, I mentioned her earlier. She says there are 4 C's of leadership: caring, clarity, communication, and consistency. We've talked about caring. We've talked about communication. Consistency, get that meeting scheduled, do it regularly. And
Clarity.
Clarity, explaining to people what your expectations are and holding them accountable is so important.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to have in the show notes your resources and contact information, and then some really good books where you can dive a little bit deeper, answer some questions you might have. But we both love this coaching. We love consultant work. We do a lot of free consultant work too, just because we want to spread this.
Yeah.
It's made a huge difference, and we've seen a lot of people improve and enjoy work. And it's been so much fun to have you pushing that change and pushing that culture and be able to walk into somewhere where everyone loves the work that they do and loves the direction we're heading, and having that clear communication as a whole company is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been great.
Thank you so much. Welcome to medicine. We've talked about coaching with Caleb Sutton, and we are going to explore some other topics, continuing to dive more into whether it's hospital-based leadership and small business, medium-sized business leadership, as we explore some other topics in future episodes. But thank you so much for joining us today.